Okay, clear my throat again. A full overview. A couple of people. This won't be for everyone to watch. I'm sorry if it's going to bore you. It's sort of a full overview of the RSPCA case because in media articles are being quoted incorrectly. The whole case is being misquoted, and I've got dogs that want to get outside. No, sit down. Vicious border collies, by the way. So here's the story. Some people contacted me because I can be found online pretty easily, and I've had a lot to do with the RSPCA because I believe that the RSPCA's use of their powers under legislation aren't always accurate and fair and equitable to both the animals and the people involved. So I got a call saying that the RSPCA had seized 10 animals and 4 pups, I believe, and most of the animals that they seized were pregnant. And they were saying that the animals were unable to be rehomed, so they needed to be euthanised, and there was an application in the court to euthanise the animals. Now, this was from a breeding facility. I've not dealt with breeding facilities before, so I asked if I could see some pictures and information, stuff from the council to show that they were correct, any legal notices and documents, so I had a fair idea of the case. What appeared to have happened is this. A mob called Oscar's Law, who do good work in trying to shut down puppy farms, had made a report to the RSPCA early last year about a breeding facility in Adelaide. And so I was then sent videos of an audio from the leader of that particular organisation making threats to the people and stuff like that. I thought was pretty poor standards. And the RSPCA went out to the property and said that the facilities weren't up to regulation, even though the council had passed the facilities. So I did look into the council approvals and stuff like that, and it is an approved facility to breed animals. I received photos of the facility. I also received video of the raid of the facility that happened afterwards. So the first attendance by the RSPCA issued some animal welfare notices relating to the regulations to do with the build of the property, and they had given them 30 on-the-spot fines for about $300, which was a large amount of money. Shortly after the RSPCA left, the kennel came down with kennel cough, whether or not it's from the RSPCA's objective, and they couldn't move any animals on, and they quarantined all the animals there. The facility had at that stage, I think, around 100 dogs. It's meant to have 65. Then it got interesting that with Oscar's Law's pressure to shut them down, they were inadvertently not going to advertise their dogs. So obviously pups for sale were stuck there, and obviously it became overcrowded because you had 6 pups in an area that would normally have been sold, and they were stuck there, and they became dogs in the eyes of the RSPCA and obviously the council. So they were overcrowded. And look, my interest at the time was whether or not the 10 dogs that were seized should be euthanised, because that was the application before the court. I got onto a lawyer friend of mine and asked if he could help these people, to try not so much help the people, but help these 10 dogs. We then were able to look at one report from an independent vet who said the animals were fine to be rehomed. So we had one report from the RSPCA, which I was able to read, and one report from an independent vet saying they were fine. So there was a conflict of interest of whether the animals were safe, should be saved or not. What scared me and frightened me, that the RSPCA report also made note of that 70% of the dogs in the facilities were unable to be homed and should be euthanised. Now, that's a lot of dogs, and that was very concerning to me. So I was able to get an application approved to send a local South Australian behaviouralist and a local South Australian vet to go and do a report at the Lonsdale facilities. And I accompanied them there, and they did their reports, and they were able to handle all of the dogs, and that included checking their teeth and in their ears and all that sort of stuff. And their assessment, both their assessments were damning one of the facilities, Pebbles, stop it. The facility, they were also damning of the condition of the animals, which had dropped from a body score of 4.5, 5 out of 5 down to 1.5, 2 out of 5. which is pretty appalling in the facilities. I got video of the facilities and found out that the facilities at the RSPCA were not up to standard regulations, so the animals shouldn't have been kept there. And the notes that were available to the independent people writing the independent reports were that the animals hadn't been taken out and walked, weren't getting any support or services there. They were basically on death row to die, which made them pretty angry, both the behaviouralist, both the vet. So my aim at that stage was to get those 10 out. When we read the rest of the reports, we realised there was a big problem, because if these 10 dogs were able to be seized under legislation, that means that RSPCA believed those animals were suffering so intensely that if they didn't take them, they would suffer. Now, worse, and so they used a law that said that those animals were suffering so intensely they had a right to seize them. But they also assessed 70% more of the animals under the same law, but never went back for them. So I had two problems. I wanted to save the 10 dogs that were in there. We submitted the reports to the courts, and I was worried they'd go back for the other 70%, even though I was also concerned that the facilities at the RSPCA weren't adequate in any case to take any more dogs, let alone house the ones that were there. So our reports went into the court. The RSPCA turned up in the court and argued the dogs should be put down. They included the pups at the time that were born in the RSPCA. So the RSPCA seized pregnant dogs, so they gave birth to pups, and they wanted to euthanise them all, was the actual initial application from them. The experts disagreed with that, so we had 3 reports versus their 1 report, and we filed that in the courts. Now, the RSPCA turned up in the courts to the magistrate and said, well, it's cost us $53,000. You can't expect us to keep paying out money. Therefore, they should be signed over to us so we can euthanise them. That was the application. And the magistrate found in their favour. So the only thing I could do, and I thought we had lost the dogs, so I did put a call out for people to help me and write to the minister and beg that the minister or the CEO don't kill them, because we had the ability to send them to an independent kennel. Now, not a breeder, an independent kennel where animals are housed. Our application to the court was to take the 10 dogs and the pups if need be, put them into independent facilities, send in and give them free veterinary treatment, free behaviouralist assessments and support work, and then rehome them. That was the application that I arranged to have made. It wasn't to support the puppy farm, it was to support the animals. The biggest problem I had all the way along is that when Oscar's Law found out that we were trying to get the animals out, they threatened and said that I was a puppy farm supporter and wanted to have their people attack me. They also put up a post saying that they wanted to go after the independent people that made the reports. And it was quite horrific, really. They were really putting a lot of pressure also on the council and on the RSPCA and on the council inspectorate to shut the place down immediately. Now, and to shut me down and to go after me and go after the people that were trying to save these 10 dogs. And now I don't know why they did that and why Deborah did that, but it caused a lot of trouble because when I was dealing with the council, they were going to go out there and shut the facility down if it had more than the proper amount of dogs, which it did. And that would have meant the dogs would have to go somewhere. And if they went to the RSPCA, I feared they would also be euthanized. So I had a catch-22 problem. A barrister friend of mine approached me, who's a really good guy, and said that, you know, what's going on with the animals? So I sent him videos and footage, and he could see that the animals deserved a right to live. So he offered to run an appeal pro bono to try and save the dogs. So we lodged an appeal against the magistrate's decision. And then I decided that I'd work with the breeders, puppy farm, whatever you want to call them, to try and get the other animals earmarked by the RSPCA out of there and safe. And that's what we did. So we put a call out and we managed to house, and I'm not going to mention all the names of the facilities because they're also worried and concerned and have also had to deal or know of someone that's dealt with the RSPCA before and they're scared of them. Most facilities are. Most breeders would be by now. And most of the shelters are worried and scared of them. So we managed to house 30-odd here. We managed to house 20 in another state. And we managed to get Wish from WA, who are just the very best, just amazing work, amazing driving over from WA, and they took 31. So what we did was we got as many animals out of there as possible to get the numbers down, to make sure that there was no excuse to euthanize any more animals. So that's the background to it. Now, there were some problems. The assessment that was made by the RSPCA, which some of it's been leaked online for some of the pups, the assessment time of 2 minutes or 3 minutes to assess 9 pups that could never be rehomed again was similarly done for most of the dogs there. It was a 2 or 3 minute thing with 4 or 5 people coming up to a cage, and if the dogs didn't come forward, they were saying because they were shy or they were heading back or they were timid that they needed to be euthanized. Now, I had problems with that, watching that, and I know other people have now seen it, they had problems. Behaviouralists from all over Australia have written responses to what they've seen and have been appalled by it. And all 3 of the independent checks that were done here in SA on the 10 dogs that are in the RSPCA felt the same way, that the assessment protocol was incorrect. Now, the same assessment guys then produced for the courts 2 weeks ago an assessment saying that these dogs must be euthanised ASAP for their own health, even though that's the same ones that wrote the initial report. So the RSPCA got their same people who used to be there and work in the RSPCA and got them to write a second report saying they must be put down. So I don't know what the RSPCA's position is, they're saying online and on media, but their applications at all stages were to euthanise the animals. Our applications the whole way along were to assess the animals, and we found that we believed the animals could be rehomed. My wife and I took one of the animals that was earmarked, and she's fine, other than you heard her scratching at the door to go out a minute ago. She's a beautiful dog. All the rescues that have got the dogs have found them, a little bit timid, a bit shocked. Obviously, they've grown up in a different environment than the home environment where all of us animal activists would love to see all animals live. But none of them were in poor health. The only animals of the 70 or 80 dogs that we've saved and the 10 in the RSPCA that had any problems were the health concerns that had come about by being put into the wrong type of enclosure at the RSPCA and being left there in the dark and not getting the support and services we believe they need. So we would like to have got them out, and everyone wants them out right now, I know, and there's been over 50,000 people have signed a petition online to try and get those animals out of the RSPCA. The RSPCA presently at law own those dogs. Now, they don't actually. The legislation says that the minister owns those dogs and he delegates his authority to the RSPCA. We're looking into the legal implications of whether that has been done properly and whether the minister really has as much right as anybody to save these animals right now. Obviously, he's not in animal welfare, so he's going to try and avoid answering the question, and we can understand why. So the the 10 dogs and the pups that are in the RSPCA are earmarked for euthanasia. They can tell you whatever they like, but the information they provide to the courts, unless they're lying to the courts, was to have them put down. The work that I've done with the lawyers, with the barrister, with the independent assessors has not been to promote the puppy farm. The work has been to prove that these dogs can be rehomed. We believe they can 100%. Now, we know they're in worse condition now than when they were seized, but they were seized from better facilities. I just want to mention the facilities were undergoing some reconcreting, but the facilities, even the worst of the facilities that we saw at the breeders' property, the worst facilities there were still better than the facilities they were put into at the RSPCA, just so you're clear on that. And now, along the way, I met with people, stop it. Along the way, I also met with the Animal Advisory Board and the Crown lawyers and everything else to look at these sorts of powers and how they're being applied, not just in this case, but in lots of cases. And there will be some changes forthwith coming, I hope. It does appear that way to how the RSPCA use their powers. But what you've got to remember is that they seize animals, then tell the owners that if they don't sign them over, there'll be extensive costs. And that's really hard on people. I mean, if they came here and used the assessment techniques, or to any of your homes out there that they used in this particular case, they would be able to seize most people's companion animals. And if they do that, and then 4 weeks later write to you and say you owe us $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, that's going to go up $1,000 a week, unless you sign them over, and you don't have the money, obviously there's a lot of pressure on you to sign those animals over. And once signed over, you have no right, nor do I, or nor does anyone, a right to know what happens to them. So now that these animals, now that we lost our appeal, these animals are in the care of the RSPCA. They can do as they wish with these animals. This is no reflection on the Lonsdale shelter or the staff. While I was down there, I saw I was outside for a couple of hours while the inspectors, the independent assessments were going on, and the RSPCA staff were absolutely amazing. I saw them bringing animals in. I saw how much they cared. The facilities from the outside looked amazing. It's only when you get in there and realise that they need some investment, obviously, into their facilities, and they need to look at how it's run, because all the money they're raising at the moment, $3.2, $3.4 million a year, is getting paid out to companies to raise that money. In other words, they're having a negative impact. All the money we donate to them, they're actually losing about $500,000 a year because they chew it up, paying it out to other outside corporations. And I would like to see better investment in their facilities, and I'd like to see better investment into behavioural techniques that we saw used. And I think that these animals that were assessed should have been taken out. This is what we suggested. Should have been taken out of the RSPCA, put into an independent area where they could get treatment, and then after a month or so there, spending time with people and being socialised, they should have been reassessed then. I think they were put onto death row and they never had a chance. They've never been given a chance, and that's why I put the hard work in. Now, as for the breeders, I'm really don't know where I stand on breeders. I'm a bit of a Oscar's Law fan in respect that I don't think we need big facilities, but we do have a couple of problems, and I'll just talk about it briefly. There's 5 million dogs in Australia. They have a life expectancy 10, 12, 14 years. If we're lucky, we all wish it was 16 and 18 and 20 maybe, but we lose animals and we need them to be replenished, and some people have certain breeds they prefer. So breeding is always going to exist unless we're no longer going to have dogs. And the cost now of regulation and everything else for a breeding facility is fairly high. So we're going to have to see larger scale breeding facilities. Now, the biggest problem I found here was threefold. The way they were being sold was incorrect, and I've talked to these people about that. And may I just say, these people may not be in breeding anymore, but look, I'm still working on who takes over and what happens with that facility. That's really personal. I don't think it's my place to talk about other people's business. But there are a couple of things. One, a breeding facility with 60 to 100 dogs, which is what we're starting to see pop up, is very hard to handle, and the slightest mistake or slightest problem sees them go over that limit too high. So I think it needs to be limited down to smaller numbers. Socialising. Pebbles, stop it. I'm just telling everyone what a lovely dog you are. Just wait. I'll let you out in a minute. The facilities need to be smaller. They need to be have more people spending time with them, so that the animals are more socialised, walked on leads, things like that. I mean, they had big runs, but they're kind of going from a small area to a big run, and they operate more like a pack of animals than they do what we expect from the home. So there needs to be some changes, and I'll work on that. And I know Oscar's Law are doing that. The difference between me and Deborah Tranter, I'd like to look at the actual facts and work out what we can do and be respectful for both people involved. And Deborah, rightfully so, is probably really pissed off with people like my wife is. She doesn't like people much. She prefers animals. And she wants to achieve something, so she'll sort of manipulate things a little bit to achieve a goal without respect for what's really happened. And I think I disagree with that. I'm more of a letter of the law sort of person. Put the whole truth out there and use that truth to guide change. The RSPCA is similar. Pebbles, you're not going. I'll let you out the back in a minute. Wait, sit. Good girl. That's one of the vicious border collies. She just loves it outside, and I've locked her in. So look, that's my overview of the case. The case was it should be an educational case for the RSPCA. It should be educational to those people out there that are breeders. It should be educational on the biggest front I see is the powers of prosecution in the RSPCA need to be reined in and changed. There needs to be procedural guidelines, and I'm working on that. And we also need to see bigger investment in the facilities of everybody and support for Pebbles. Come here, yeah, lay down. How's that? She is a terrible dog. See, this is why the RSPCA want to seize them. They scratch on doors wanting to go out. So look, there's a lot of things need changing, but the biggest change really needs to be that if we do buy from a puppy farm or from a breeder, we go and look at the facilities where we can. Obviously, quarantine comes into play because puppies can't be vaccinated, so you can't really have someone wandering through. We need to bring down the numbers, maximum numbers they can have. We need more socialisation in those facilities. And we need a better way of advertising the dogs to know. Pebbles, I better finish this video before dog scratches through the door. So the overview is this. A lot of stuff you're hearing from the RSPCA are going to give you their spin. Oscar's Law is going to give you a spin. The media wouldn't have a clue what the truth is. They just make stuff up. But the truth is, things have gone wrong here. Really good people have stood up and rescued these animals. There's still 10 dogs that possibly are alive. Sadly, I don't think they are, but they're possibly alive that we should really continue to pressure to get them out. And we need to change how this happens, because every dog deserves a right of life, and the only people that can be their voice are people like myself and like Deborah Tranter and like all yous out there that have supported us and helped raise money and helping people like Wish and the facilities here in South Australia by foster caring these animals and giving them the best chance at life. So there's your overview. Long-winded, I know, but hopefully I gave you most of the information.